And we scaled the business from about 6 million and 70 staff to nearly 100 million and nearly 1,000 people working for us. And I very much saw the power and the benefit of having a group of people building and running my business rather than it being me as this sort of powerhouse, sort of ivory tower type sort of point and shoot kind of approach to things. So, and I can't stress this enough, for me, video was transformational. And towards the end of my career, I was probably sending somewhere in the region of 300 to 400 personalized videos a week, either to people that work for me or directly to consumers.
So hello everyone, my name's Joe Morrison from Founders Reboot, and we've got another one of our business owner interviews, and today is a really great topic that we're going to do because it's about that goal that many of you have got in your business, which is towards how do I sell my business? What's it like going through the process? What's it like when you complete that process? What's it like on the other side? I know so many people are striving towards that. And we're really fortunate to have Ed Ferris here join us today. Hello, Ed. Welcome.
Hi, Joe. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great to have you on. Thank you so much. I've also got my new kitten on my lap at the moment. So if I'm distracted, this is why, basically, because she just can't resist basically coming in. So if I look distracted, that's why. But I do want to listen to Ed today. He's got some very important things to share with us. So thank you, Ed. The point of these discussions is to share a bit of lived experience of being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, so that we can all help each other out and learn off, stand on the shoulders of others, basically. So Ed's in a great position, and he's sold multiple businesses. He's been through that whole journey several times. And maybe, Ed, if you could just give us an overview of the kind of businesses you've been in, and how you've run them. What's your style been?
Yeah, sure. I'm a second generation, or was a second generation jeweler. I grew up in the back of a jewelry shop in Richmond. My father was a pilot for British Airways, but desperate to work for himself. He had that real self-starter kind of mentality, and so to me, it was an amazing world of watching people's major emotional moments in their life become real, and I fell in love with the business side of it and that emotional connection you had with customers, and started as soon as I was allowed to. I took over the business in my sort of early to mid 20s. My father was he had enough. Stress wasn't particularly good on him, so we then took it on a journey through from a small independent multiple jewelry business around the suburbs of London to becoming the second fastest growing business in the UK and mid-market company in 2014. And we grew massively through that decade as we got involved with Pandora as one of the largest franchisees of the brand. We were there at the right moment, for sure. And we scaled the business from about 6 million and 70 staff to nearly 100 million and nearly 1,000 people working for us. And very much around for me, my passion was, it turned out, and I think I realized this in the last 5 years, was communication was the part that I really fell in love with, that how to connect with everybody. So the consumer, but most importantly to me was the people that we had working for us. So to get to roughly 1,000 people was very difficult to make them feel like they were part of this family business. And I now hate the word family business because I don't think that's what it's about, because you're not a family. You don't say what you feel to to your team. But I really, really enjoyed obsessing about how to make people feel part of the future of our business, part of the knowing exactly what was going on, and that they were listened to. So I spent most of my time either planning communication, working out how to create the communication in a form that everybody could receive, whether it was video, whether it was written, whether it was face to face. And I probably spent the large part of my time out on the road meeting the people that work for me. And I very much saw the power and the benefit of having a group of people building and running my business rather than it being me as this sort of powerhouse, sort of ivory tower type, sort of point and shoot kind of approach to things. So collaboration was massively important to me. And the team of people that I built in my senior leadership team were the people that ran the company for me. And I love that part of building that trust in that group so that they could go on and be incredibly successful people. And all of them have, which is a joy to me, having sold, and they've parted ways with the company and gone on to do bigger and better things. So yeah, I'm still deep at heart, though. I still love and missed the bit that I missed so much was, that moment, seeing people getting engaged, getting married. It was a real privilege to be part of. It is one of the biggest moments in your life, isn't it? As you start to build a life together as a couple. And that's, I think, how I tried to see my team as well. Like we were part of something collectively. We were on a journey together to build something amazing, and a bit like a relationship is, I suppose. So yeah, that was my style. I suppose it was definitely not about me. It was about everybody else. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to describe me, my style.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I mean, it's great you've shared that because so many people they have a difficulty making that transition into letting go. You know, as kind of business owners, we're often control freaks and we want to be everywhere, and then you got to kind of step back. You got to let other people come forward. It sounds like you had a really great approach for that. Communication.
Uh,
I often talk about communication like externally in marketing, but obviously the communication internally is what you're talking about there and how important that is in team building, momentum, getting everyone on the same page, having that sense of purpose.
yeah, you know what I think? Yeah, I'm sort of starting to create the journey of a new business with a couple of people at the moment, and it's very much about, yeah, that internal work that you do. I don't think you realize how impactful and important it is to the business. We spend so much money on brand positioning and brand image, and then we forget about the fact that that brand only exists because of the people that make it work every day. And so if they're not part of that experience, if they're not part of the words that you create and the image, and that they fully buy into it and are treated in the way by you as a business, then how can you expect your consumers to get that same experience from the people that work with you every day? So what always try to say to people, we employed a lot of people that would not stay in our business for very long. Students, young people. This was a way of earning money. Often their first job. But I'd say to all students, you've got a real chance to learn life skills whilst you're here in this business. So don't just turn up for the salary. See this as an opportunity for you to add value to our business by being amazing, but for us to teach you skills that will help with negotiation, with selling, how to sell yourself, and to come to work even if you're only doing 8 hours a week with real ownership of your progress in this business. And it seemed to have a big impact on it. And I still talk to a lot of the people that work for me today. So that's a great sign, I think, in terms of the impact you have on people. But I was absolutely, totally, and I can't stress this enough. For me, video was transformational in getting to the people that work for me and consumers as well, of course, because you could create that personal touch to it. And towards the end of my career, I was probably sending somewhere in the region of 300 to 400 personalized videos a week, either to people that work for me or directly to consumers. So it might be me singing happy birthday to somebody, It could be me, praising someone in the business. It could be the entire office, in my team in the office behind me at a camera, screaming and shouting at some success story in someone's life, where they had a baby, or and that was the same for customers. So what we encouraged was that communication to be two-way. So they were telling me what was going on in our consumers' lives, whether it was, they're getting engaged or married. So I tried to, as much as I could, personalize that message to people. Say, we care about you. You're really important to us. And you might have only spent, £300 in the store, and we would have transactions in the tens of thousands, but everyone was special, everyone was important, and that message you tried to get through to everybody. And the great thing I saw about doing that, especially with video, was even the finance team that we had embraced video. Finance, HR, it kind of infiltrated every corner of our business. How we communicate with people, how we prepared people. So they'd all get an email from me if you were coming for a job interview with a video explaining what to expect, what we'd expect from you, what you should expect. So there were no surprises to people as well. And that was the same for that customer journey. You've ordered a ring from us. This is what happens next. This is when you'll hear from us. So there's no doubt or questions, because you don't remember everything that happens in a transaction. So just to keep reminding people, your ring's still being made, really looking forward to seeing you back in the shop. It'll be another 3 or 4 weeks. Having that in person come from either the salesperson or from a system of messages from me, just kept that personal touch throughout, and just removed doubt, I suppose. It built trust.
That's an extraordinary amount of time invested in that communication. Absolutely extraordinary. And we talk a lot, there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn, like you've got to do what you're saying, like build trust. Video is the best way to do that in that kind of format. So it's interesting to see you've done this on the inside of a company and, with your customers as well. That's how much do you think that commitment and that dedication to communication and what you invested in contributed to the value you ultimately realized from the business?
Well, I suppose there were two businesses that I had. One was Pandora. It was about being part of an experience of a brand that became a global powerhouse. It's the largest jewelry brand in the world now. I can't claim any credit for how Pandora marketed their business. But I know that the impact that we had on the people that worked in our store had a massive impact on the opportunity that we had and how we took that opportunity. So, we embraced the learning, especially at Christmas. We were on national news. The queues outside a Pandora shop were, legendary, and people still talk about them. We would get complaints to queues blocking John Lewis's front door on a Sunday morning. But for us, that was desperately important to learn how to get better at. The whole, always love that British cycling analogy in the Olympic team. They focus on 10 things that they could knock zero point 0.1 of a second off, which would add up to that total second saving. For us, it was about obsessing and listening to the staff about where we can make improvements. So, we had our goal was to be what we thought was the best franchise partner that Pandora had in terms of it. So I know that our performance as a retailer was very high because of that focus, but because of the way we treated people, because of the way we listened to people. In terms of my main jewelry business, it's very hard to put a value on it, in terms of how much it had. But our YouTube channel was a big obsession for me, in terms of using it as an educational tool for our industry, but for our business as well. And although it was fairly late in my experience of really pushing that and putting a lot of content on it, we found that even after we'd sold, the people that bought it after us, that wasn't part of their business strategy. And I respect that. That's fine. But that YouTube channel grew massively for 3 years after, with no one putting anything on it, because it obsessed around communication, education of, what customers need to know or want to know and need to understand. I think added massively. And YouTube was our number one customer service point for people to engage with our brand. Our videographer accidentally became part of customer service because he was managing your YouTube channel. So yeah, I see massive power in that. But yeah, I don't know is the answer, unfortunately. But what I do know is that I got closer and closer and closer to understanding how people felt about our business as individuals, and our relationships with our consumers transformed and got better and better. But this came from, I think a lot of business owners have this. You read a business book that changes your life, and it changes your business mentality, because you go through those phases of, you're doing really well, you're upbeat, you're positive, or you've got something big and constructive to work on, so you're feeling positive, and then you start to feel, is this working? What's next? Where's the growth coming from? Where's the next opportunity? And I read a book called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan, who I then was like, read that book, and I had to meet Marcus Sheridan, because to me he spoke about how I felt but hadn't figured it out yet as to how to get closer to customers and be more useful to customers. So I met him and spent a year working with him and his team to learn about content creation, to learn about video communication. And I think because it came from me, and so many things fail, don't they, in business, where the people at the top don't buy in fully to change, to new things. So I knew I had to demonstrate it to everybody that this was me, this is what we were doing as a business. And that's where the buy-in came in every part of the business. Each section, like HR sat there and went, well, I can embrace this in my sector, in my section of the business. The training team, we can embrace this process, not about how we talk to consumers. So yeah, it was very, very, very exciting. And I talk about Marcus's book a huge amount to people, because to me it's a massive impact it has on so many businesses that I've passed it on to. So if you haven't read it, read it.
It's a great recommendation. Thank you. And it feels like you were quite ahead of the game there, because, video has just taken over everything really. Ed, let me ask you about, at what point was selling the business? When did that come into? Was it something you were thinking about from the start, or was it something you reached a point, and what triggered that?
I can't. I ran a business that was represented. I represented my family. So my father. I was one of four children. I was the eldest. I had two half sisters who were a lot younger than me. And I think when COVID hit, and we had that period of time where furlough didn't exist, where our landlords were, rightfully as concerned as we are about how we were going to pay the rent. We had funds to fall back on to be able to cover and pay people's wages for a few months. But what would happen if this carried on for months on end? And for the first time in probably 15 years, 10, 15 years, I found myself with the time to be at home all the time, be present in my children's lives, and they were, at the time, they were 12 and 9. And I was able to concentrate on myself a bit more, give myself some time to look after myself and figure out what I wanted out of life, I suppose. I spent a lot of time running, a lot of time on my bike, because the roads were empty and you didn't get run over through that lockdown. And COVID was a very unpleasant as a retailer. I won't go into the ins and outs of it all, but it very much got to the point where I thought, I'm 40. this doesn't need to be me forever. I've done this since I was, as far as I was concerned, since I was 10 years old, and said to my dad, I want to take over your business. And I kind of got to the point where I thought, Pandora's journey is a very interesting one, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly. But perhaps they will need to go on a new journey themselves as well as their brand matures. And so it just seemed like the right moment to step away from Pandora. And at the same time, that made me look at my other business and say, do I want to be doing this for the rest of my life? And I think just the priority of family, building stronger relationships with my siblings, having more time to extract the business from my family life, was a massive impact for me or a massive part of the decision-making process was to get away, because I'd lived in a business where from the day I can remember, the business was at the breakfast table, the lunch table, the dinner table. We'd go on holiday and we'd be filming jewelry shops, and that would be part of our everyday life. And I just thought maybe it's time for a break, to run away, start something new. But my biggest problem with all of that was I never really thought about myself. I always was always totally obsessed with the people that work for me. If I ever had to do anything that was of negative impact to staff, it wasn't all plain sailing. Occasionally we would have to make redundancies or restructure a store because it wasn't performing. It destroyed me. It ate me up. It pulled me to pieces. I couldn't sleep for months. I was extremely stressed, very difficult to live with, because I really felt I was letting them down. And I just thought, I can't keep doing this to myself. I care so much about everyone else, but I'm not really thinking about me very often. So it was a self-care thing, I think, that my father had worked his socks off for so long, and I'd seen the impact that stress had on him and our life, and thought, I didn't have that resilience, that kind of self-starter from nothing to plow through, what's the word? Recessions, to almost lose everything, to sleep on the shop floor for 5 months because he couldn't afford to pay anybody to open the shop. I didn't have that ability to swallow stress like he did. It had more of an impact on me. And I thought, having seen the impact it had on him in his 60s and I was 40, I thought, maybe I just don't need this all day long. So I'm sorry, it's a really long answer to your question. But it is a massive decision-making process, because I never, ever, I always thought from the age of 10, this was me forever. And I work with founders now who tell me they're there till 100, no one can get rid of them. They're going out in a box, this is them. And I'd always see myself like that. So that process of going through and going, oh my gosh, can I do this? And for the first time in my life, I just went, I have to be selfish. I have to protect myself. And that was a really odd feeling in itself, like really uncomfortable.
Oh, thanks, Ed. I mean, it's great to talk through that whole journey you've been on. Because I have to talk with business owners, and the important thing I help them with is to become a bit more self-aware of like what it is they want and why did they
Mm,
start their business, or what is it they're looking for. There's nearly always something outside of the money that's really important to them, but it often gets forgotten. It's
mhm,
interesting for you. It was COVID was the kind of spark that kind of reignited like what's important for you. But it can be
mhm,
different for different things. But obviously, when we're all in the stress of running a business, and particularly when we've got to keep the sales coming in, that's when all this other stuff falls by the wayside, and then we get really stressed, and then we start to resent
mhm.
the business rather than actually, enjoying it.
Yeah.
Just tell me, Ed, what's the thing you'd pass on to business owners that you wish you knew either before a sale or prior to a sale, or maybe when going through a sale? What are the key things you'd wish you'd known back then?
Mhm. I think the biggest mistake I made was, because it became so important for me to find a pathway out. Um, I didn't really trust anybody to do that bit because it was my future was in it could be in this person's hands, and so therefore when it came down to it, having always been, I felt good at delegating and giving tasks to other people and seeing the merit in professionals doing jobs that I was, not qualified to do. I suddenly couldn't let this be in anyone's hands other than my own. And I think that whole experience, when I work with founders now and business owners and so on and so forth, that I would always recommend it not to be you that takes the. Maybe you do the negotiation at the beginning, maybe you find the right person, but step yourself out of that process at some point, because emotional roller coaster is an understatement. I sold both my businesses to two different people and they completed in the same week. It was traumatic's an understatement. My wife still has PTSD from the experience of watching me crumble from, you know, I sold one of my businesses to people I massively admire. The people in our industry that I see as friends. They're people. The father, similar age to my dad, who I've looked up to for years, and his kids, same as me and my brother, similar age. I admire them massively. And when you shake hands with friends, you shake hands with friends. You've done a deal, but the lawyers always have to get involved, and I respect that and I get that, but it unpicks that handshake a bit, and that's not a criticism of them at all. That's the process that every business has to go through. The lawyer's job is to protect their interests. They're not doing their job if they're not, and being in that process was horrific. It's difficult. It's not easy, and it's not a criticism of the other side or anything like that. It's just the journey you go on. But yeah, I would stay well clear of that if I ever did it again. I'd say, there you go, tell me when it's done, because until someone actually puts the money in your bank account, you don't believe it's possible that someone's going to pay you for what you've spent your whole life doing. Um, and even then, with the money in the bank, you still don't quite believe it really happened. So, again, a really long answer to your question. I think employ somebody to do it for you, pay them for it, and take that stress away for you. If you can't do that, try and get someone to keep you out of the fine detail of it all, um, who you trust and has got your best interests at heart. And I would try and do that for people in a similar situation. If I could help friends or family and do it for them, because hopefully there's that trust and feeling of connection that especially family and friends. I would really try and encourage them to use me because I wouldn't want them to go through that same experience again. My wife's PTSD comes from me picking up my phone. My eyesight's not brilliant, so I squint anyway when I'm reading something. But I would start squinting and then disappear into the thing and go quiet, and then she'd be going, what's going on? And even now, when I pick up my phone and I squint a little bit, she goes, "What's going on?" I was like, "Don't worry, darling, they can't get to us anymore. It's all okay." And that's the other part. I would really, really try and, because it is a selfish period. You're the one that's gaining from this. Everybody else in your business, I think, I mean, not in all cases, of course, but your team at some point will find out about the process. Make sure it's from you, not from anybody else. You've got to really appreciate what they're going through, because it's not what they signed up for. They signed up to work for you. Some of them might be pleased it's that you're going, of course, but think about them and think about the closest people around you, the impact it's having on them. I wasn't aware of that. I was in my own selfish bubble, which I'd never been in before. I didn't know how to deal with it. So yeah, that's
Well, I
probably.
mean, and doing two in 1 week, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's pressure. But tell us, Ed, just give us a picture of what's life like on the other side, post
Mhm.
sale. And because so many people are working towards that and they can spend decades working towards that goal. So just give us a glimpse of like what's it like on the other side and what have you kind of learned about yourself since?
Sure. I think there's an initial, I'd say, 6 months where you're just relieved. You're sleeping better. When I probably 20 years ago as an insomniac, children helped me get rid of that insomnia to a degree because you're just so exhausted as well as, your brain switched on. So I learned to fall asleep during the day at the weekends, which was a great thing. But yeah, give yourself the time to have that depressurization, to let the stress, get out of your system. Don't rush into something new. And the other big thing I worked really hard at was to get myself out to reconnect with people that I love or admire or respect and just spend time with them with no agenda. No, I'm trying to make a sale here or come up with a business opportunity or just just hang out with people. I've hung out with people who I don't know particularly well, but I've met on my in my life along the way since I was a child, like friends' parents and things like that. I just sought people out in my life that I just thought I'd like to reconnect with you. Most I haven't reconnected with again, but I've learned more about myself because they know where I came from. I've learned about the bits I'm good at and not so good at. One of the things that I really wasn't prepared for was having money. I'd always drawn from the company a salary. I'd always, tried to meet my needs if I can, or tighten my belt if not. But to have the responsibility of money is a terrifying experience. You know how to control your business, you know how to pull levers, you know how to invest, de-invest, protect, all of those things. But suddenly you've got a weight of responsibility on you, and if your outcome is to never work again, that responsibility is massively big. And the problem that I found is I went looking for expertise to help guide me and to learn from. But all of that expertise has their own interest, which is to get hold of your money and manage it and get paid and earn money in that way. So no one's actually in your corner. No one's giving you that independent advice. So I found that a ridiculous problem to have. But yeah, if you've never had money, if you've never had wealth, I suppose it's really difficult thing to get your head around and to trust somebody to help you do the right things for you rather than the right things for their business. So it's taken me a long time to figure that part out and feel confident and comfortable in the parts of the parts that are important to me. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a risk taker, and that's dangerous. Once you say I'm never going to work again, which is what I thought my decision was, I'm never going to work again. The stress was so bad at the end. I can't imagine ever having to go through this again. Um, I felt that, that 6 months in, that pressure hit me hard, like, crikey, I've got to be able to live off income from this money for the rest of my life, for my family. My kids are at peak spending age. They're teenagers. They're bleeding bleeding me dry on a daily basis. So yeah, I think preparing yourself for what to do with it. But again, depending on your age, I suppose I wasn't in a rush because I knew I had a long time to get it right. But I did feel a lot of pressure on that. Um, don't retire is the biggest message I can make. I'm not saying that because I'm 40 and you shouldn't retire at 40 because you definitely shouldn't. I think giving up and not having a purpose is really, really unhealthy. And I'm doing a lot of different things now. Some could become something big for me in the future, but none of what I'm doing is financial anymore. It's about fulfilling my personal needs to help people, to help business owners. I've tried mentoring through my local council. I went on a course with young kids. You know, it was rewarding, but it wasn't me. And I very much realized that at the end of the first 6 months I spent with a young child, and you know, I know where my strength is. I know where my passion is now, which is helping founders, helping early stage businesses to build their strategy, to build their growth, to give them confidence. You know, that's the biggest thing that I think lacks in the UK is a lack of confidence in your own ability. And I just seek out people that I can help. You know, who could you admire more than Simon Squibb, who's literally going up to people in the street and saying, "What's your dream? I want to help you." That to me is, you know, I would say he's definitely an inspiration for me in that I want to do that in a way that I can do it. So it's probably best for people who are close in age to me. Not I don't necessarily relate massively to a 20-year-old, although I'll have a 20-year-old soon. But even so, I'm trying to help people in that age bracket as well. But yeah, figure out what it is that you can do, and if you can make it not about money, it's massively rewarding because that conversation is out of it. You know, that's out. There's no need to say how much you paying me for my time. Um, yeah, that's the thing I figured out about myself, like what I want to do next. And I do want to build new things, but I definitely don't want them to own me. I cannot have something that owns me. I have to own me and the business to be an extension of what I love. So yeah, is that helpful enough?
That's great. It's really great. And yeah, thank you for sharing because that's a dream for a lot of us. Like we want to know what is it like on the other side? Should I be working towards this goal or not? And if I get there, I mean
Yeah.
that's great wisdom you're sharing there because you've been through it and you've been on that journey and you've learned from it.
Financial freedom is the best thing in the world. You know, it's a privilege. But it comes with responsibility, I think. And I think if you want to live in this country and be part of this country and pay towards making it better, then give something back to other people. And it doesn't have to be working for a charity. I chair a charity. I get some benefit and reward from doing that, but it doesn't have to be any of those things. It doesn't have to. It can be to just fulfill your inner you. And for some people, charity isn't a thing that I think suits them. But yeah, just go and find that thing and do it as much as you can. And there is nothing more rewarding, I think, than helping people. Whether it's helping somebody who has desperately needs help for whatever reason it is, whether it's their health or if you can be a carer for them, brilliant. If that's not your thing, doesn't matter. Go and help someone in business. Go and mentor somebody who you respect. Um, I've learned more about myself from working with people who, in their eyes, have got no credibility in business yet. You know, they haven't earned it, but I've learned far more about business from those people than I have about than necessarily following all these mega stars on LinkedIn. I can't relate to the megastars, Gary Vaynerchuk's and people like that. I admire them, but I can't relate to them. It's a bit like I'm a rock fan. You know, I've met some of my rock idols, but we're not on the same wavelength. You know, I'm not cool. I can relate to everyday people. I think that's much more.
There's some things money can't buy.
Yeah, I definitely haven't bought cool. That's for sure.
Ed, thank you so
um,
much for it's been such
no
a
problem.
wonderful discussion to have with you and to talk through your whole history there and to be so open about it. If I could summarize some of the key things you've said, I think in terms of building your business, you made some great points about trust and all the things you were mentioned about communication, and you said it yourself, ultimately help build trust with your employees, with your colleagues, with your customers, and communication is often the way to facilitate that. So trust is a key point I took from it. I think you've talked a lot about understanding yourself, the journey you've been on to know yourself better, like what consumes you, what type of work you don't like or it doesn't, is not optimal for you. And that's helped guide you both like during whilst you're working on your business, but also in the post-business era as well. And
Mm,
then finally about defining your purpose. And we talk a lot about that in business, don't we? About having that, what is it? Who you serving here? What's different about your business? Why are you in business? Why are you doing this? You talked about your family as well, and how that kind of informed you. But also in that post sale process, like what's your purpose then, and rediscovering it in some way because it is going to be different.
mm.
Um, so yeah, so thank you so much. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add now to say what you're doing now, or anything you want us to make aware of.
Well, I chair a charity called the Pinder Trust. It's something that was very important to me and my father. We used to support individuals who, once you turn 25, if you have a disability, you're not really supported in the same way you are as a child or young adult. We provide hydrotherapy or aquatic physiotherapy for people who can't afford it. So if you have any interest in that, please get in touch and help support some of the wonderful people we look after. I chair a drinks business called Hip Hop. We're the fastest growing carbonated drinks brand in the UK this year. It's a very exciting journey that we're on, with two amazing founders and a team that we're building. So, we're in Sainsbury's, Waitrose, M&S, people like that. So look out for us. We're a great tasting pop that's a lot better for you than your average soda. This really sounds like a sales pitch. But if you're a founder, if you're an early stage business that's looking for funding, I have a business that helps businesses raise money. And also I have a real passion for supporting British business. And if I can help in any way, just listen to what's going on in your business and give some of my thoughts or support you in some way. It's something that I do for love, not for money. And so yeah, I'm here if you need me. Please find me on LinkedIn and come and have a chat if you need to.
Right. Well, thanks so much, Ed, for your time today. Thanks for sharing all the things you're involved
Thanks,
in. As you
Joe.
say, you've not gone any quieter since selling your business. It's it's more things than ever by the sounds of it. So you're definitely not retired. Um,
Don't retire.
um, For business owners out there, you can visit foundersreboot.com and find more detailed advice and support for business owners like yourself who are looking for more freedom and ultimately to get that financial freedom that Ed talked about today. But otherwise, I'll say thanks very much, Ed Ferris, for talking to us today, and thank you everyone for listening.